How we doing, guys? Welcome back to the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Richie, and Richie is riding solo today. Unfortunately, last evening, Brett and I were not able to elaborate on our Met Yankee segment as we hoped to. Big shout out, PB Rardo. Really enjoyed having him as a guest on our show yesterday. Definitely check out PB Rardo on oral streaming platforms. He's really doing his thing right now. And I used to work with the guy, and I know how passionate he was about the NBA, but getting into a real subjective conversation with him yesterday about so many ever-growing topics and themes in the NBA was really a good time, and I look forward to getting him back on the show. Without further ado, I'm going to let you know what we're going to be talking about here. I've got the outlook for the Mets and the Yankees in 2023, something we wanted to hit on last evening. I also have a question to Ranger fans and hockey fans alike. Does the addition of Patrick Kane make the Rangers a legitimate Stanley Cup threat to come out of the East? Nothing new here. KD and the guys on TNT at it again, and I'm going to speak on the status of LeBron James's health. Dan Orlovsky's comments about the Carolina Panthers. And we have a boxing movie into Chapter 3 that's going to be premiering tonight. Going to start it off with the Mets and Yanks. This is my ultimate take on the Mets and Yankees. Last year, the Mets are a 100-win team, fall short in round one to the San Diego Padres. So a very quick exit for a team that I think had higher expectations. I think it goes without saying that a lot of Met fans were disappointed. I know one of my best friends, Mr. Richard Dorney, definitely was disappointed. New York Yankees finished a couple of games behind the Mets, but were able to win their first series. After flirting with possibly being the greatest baseball team of all time and shattering the 98 Yankee records, the team really had a rough month of August, parts of July. They were able to put it together, beat a good Cleveland Guardians team, but met their masters in the form of the Houston Astros, who have been a thorn in the Yankees' side for years. I'm going to start with the Mets. I'm not sold past the 1-2 punch of Verlander and Scherzer. I'm trying to the best of my ability to not discriminate against their ceilings because of age, but age is a factor. Justin Verlander is coming off a Cy Young campaign in the American League, now playing in the National, as the Mets co-ace with Mad Max. Max Scherzer, to me, still a premier pitcher, but he was on the injured list for a decent chunk of last season. To the Mets' credit, they were able to compensate for his absence and Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom is currently in Texas. I'm expecting a bounce-back year out of him. They lost Chris Bassett to Toronto. They lost Taijuan Walker to the Chicago Cubs. They added Quintana. They added Senga. They still have Carrasco. I think the only true indicator on where this Mets pitching staff is going to be is by watching them play. But one thing I will say about this Mets team is I believe their offense can really do some special things. They have quite the lineup. You have the polar bear, Pete Alonso, who should be a home run candidate to lead the National League, to lead MLB, and possibly even be in the MVP discussion. You have a former batting champion in Jeff McNeil. You have Francisco Lindor, who after a rocky first year in New York has really found his place with that Mets organization. So I believe that in that regard, Brandon Nimmo also, can't forget him, locked him up to, in some people's estimations, maybe too lucrative of a deal, but definitely a guy the Mets did not want to lose. You're talking about the defending National League champions who finished third in this division. You're talking about a Braves team who won the World Series 2 seasons ago. And, of course, the aforementioned Mets. I got the Mets finishing third in this division, but being a wild card team. We're going to elaborate on the NL East on a future show. But ultimately, I think the Mets are going to be around that 94, 95 win threshold, which I think gets them third in that division. I think the Phillies are going to be closer to like 96, and I think the Braves potentially could be a 100-win team. So I got the Braves winning the division. I got Philly finishing second. I got the Mets finishing third, but I think Philly and the Mets are both going to be strong wild card contenders. As for my New York Yankees, Aaron Judge coming off a season for the ages, an MVP season, shattering the previous record holder, Roger Maris's home run record. I think the issue for the Yankees last year that could actually continue to linger this year is that Judge had to do a little too much. Last year, he played a lot of center field. That's not going to be an issue now with the addition of Harrison Bader, who was acquired for Jordan Montgomery last year. General manager Brian Cashman last year added certain pieces that just didn't work out. Frankie Montes potentially could be out for the entire year. He was projected to be our number 5 starter this year. Domingo Germán will fill in that position, who I feel comfortable and confident in. Andrew Benintendi, another huge deadline deal. Unfortunately, last year he was not able to contribute too much. He got injured rather quickly. Scott Efros, another guy who got injured. Michael King, who is, in my opinion, the most important member of that bullpen, missed last year after getting injured in Baltimore. He missed the stretch run. DJ LeMahieu, former batting champion 2 times over, once in each league. He is another player that's going to need a bounce-back year. I think a lot of people around baseball, Yankee fans alike, believe that this Yankees team needs a legitimate leadoff man. When I look at the candidates, I'll be honest, I don't see a ton of natural leadoff hitters on this current roster. I think it might be best suited for the Yankees to have DJ LeMahieu hit second, keep Aaron Judge in the 2-hole, and then you go lefty-righty with Anthony Rizzo and Giancarlo Stanton. There is definitely an issue at shortstop. I believe Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is a Band-Aid. He's a stopgap. Ultimately, the Yankees' 2 positions of need are going to be shortstop and left field. As of right now, you have options in left, but they're not the options you want, mainly because Aaron Hicks is going to be getting more action than I think the Yankees would prefer. Ideally, he is your 4th outfielder. I do expect Giancarlo Stanton to occasionally play right. I find him as less of a liability in right than in left field. Of course, Judge is going to need days off or occasionally keep the bat in his hand, but keep him as a DH. I do love the idea of Harrison Bader in this lineup. Personally, I would have him hitting towards the bottom of the lineup to turn the lineup over, but it seems like as of right now, Aaron Boone has him comfortable around that 6-hole. I am calling for a comeback season for DJ LeMahieu, and I am calling for another MVP caliber season from Aaron Judge. I think the difference between this particular Yankees team as opposed to last year's Yankees team is I think the actual starting 5, the rotation itself, is going to be a lot more sustainable. I think that they have improved. Luis Severino backs up a spot, but I think that's a good thing in terms of innings management. You got Carlos Rodon, who is like the 1A, 1B co-ace, along with Garrett Cole, who is the strikeout leader of last season. Domingo Germán has proved his worth, similar to Ramiro Mendoza on previous Yankee teams, who was kind of like Mr. Everything. He could be a middle relief guy. He could pitch as a starter. I'm expecting bigger things out of Clark Schmidt to be a better contributor out of the pen. And, of course, nasty Nestor Cortez, who is in your 3 spot of the actual rotation, last year was a candidate for Cy Young winner. The right guy was voted. Verlander deserved it. But if Nestor can have a similar year to last year, I think the Yankees are going to win a lot of games. There are concerns, though. Hitting with men in scoring position has been a Waterloo for the Yankees for quite some time. I do think that with the bigger bags and with the pitching clock rules, there's going to be more aggression on the base pads, and I do like what Luis Rojas, the former Mets manager, now coaching third for the Yankees, contributed to their new approach last year. Do I think it's a make-or-break year for Aaron Boone? I'm not sure about that. They did give him an extension. I do know that Brian Cashman has been under a lot of heat with a lot of Yankee fans, but Yankee fans ultimately do not make the decisions. Friend of the show, Sergio Rodriguez, did a hot take on this recently. He feels that the Yankees ultimately are going to need to make a deadline deal to improve the roster to a way where they can get over the proverbial hump and get past those Astros or possibly get past the Mariners this time around. The Mariners are definitely going to be heard from. Ultimately, I think this is the year that the Yankees do break their bad streak of just not being able to get to the World Series. They haven't been there since 2009, which is also the last time they won it. They've been close. In 2017, the Yankees took Houston to 7. The Yankees were in a very tight series back in 2010 with the Texas Rangers. They just haven't been back to the World Series since. But to Sergio's point, I think ultimately what's going to be the driving force that can get the New York Yankees back to the World Series is going to have to be a trade deadline trade or two. Now, of course, Yankees just extend their lead 9-0 over the Pirates. Andres Chaparro hits a grand slam in the top of the 9th. Spring training, always good to see some of these kids get their opportunities. But yeah, Yankees are going to have to legitimately make a move if they're going to be able to not only win the East, but get further. I'm expecting a busy trade deadline for the Yankees, unless of what they're currently running with over exceeds expectations. Keeping it in NYC for a second, we've got the addition of Patrick Kane, lifelong Chicago Blackhawk, making his Rangers a legitimate Stanley Cup threat in the East. Is it true? I certainly think so. What I like about this is it gives the Rangers the ability to go with a lot of different lines and give teams a lot of different looks. I also like the fact that him and Panarin have a history going back to Chicago, albeit quite some time. They can do a lot of mixing and matching, whether it's Chris Kreider. He's going to be involved. Ultimately, I think the biggest advantage of bringing Patrick Kane over is that I think he's going to open up a lot of goal-scoring opportunities for Zibanejad, for Kreider, for Panarin. And I think the biggest mystery for Ranger fans is right now, what line is he going to show up on? I think that is the one that nobody knows for sure yet, but definitely a buzz around Madison Square Garden. And it's funny. The Rangers were one game away from the Stanley Cup Finals last year, losing a heartbreaker to the Tampa Bay Lightning. After, they lost in 6 last year. Let me take that back. They were up 2-0 in the series, lost 4 consecutive. A real heartbreaker at the Garden, Game 5, got eliminated in Tampa in Game 6. But the point to be made on this Rangers team is that I think this is the window now where they can do this, especially in a season where the Eastern Conference is so much stronger than the West. If the Rangers are playing in the West, they are the number 1 seed right now. And it's not an indictment of the West. I just think that teams tend to kick the crap out of each other. Of course, the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche are nursing a lot of injuries. That has been an issue. Some Avs fans think that they kind of missed the parade with adding more talent given the injuries. But when you hoist up a Stanley Cup just the previous year, I think it's a little easier to take. But between the Rangers right now acknowledging that they have a window to win a cup, they haven't done that since 94. And with the New York Knicks coming within a hair of winning the NBA title back in 94, they won 7 with the Houston Rockets. It is incredibly exciting to think that maybe this is the year that we could get the dual parade. I think with the Knicks, I might be reaching a little. Brett was on the show last night. He thinks they're still a year or 2 away. But at the level that the Knicks are playing at right now with Jalen Brunson, a little bit under the radar, even though people are acknowledging that they are playing well. The departure of KD, him going over to the Phoenix Suns. And I got to say, it's an exciting time for the 2 Garden teams. Undeniably a very exciting time. And I'm going to move it over to the guy I just mentioned, Kevin Durant. Love to hear some feedback on this from the viewers. The status of LeBron's health is also going to be touched on here. We're going to start it up with KD, though. Shaquille O'Neal, and especially Charles Barkley, he's had a bad bone back and forth with these guys over the years. And this is my ultimate take on this. When you're a professional athlete, especially in the year 2023, I believe that as long as members of the media are not going at you on a personal level when it comes to family matters, when it comes to things of that nature, love affairs, anybody that's in your life on a romantic level, things of that nature, children, of course, are always off limits. I believe that KD needs to cool it and take the criticism a little better, because I do think that it does make a difference when you factor in Excuse me. I'm on a podcast. I'm gonna have to call you back. Sorry about that. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. My apologies. KD needs to be able to take his criticism a little better. When you're recognized as one of the greatest basketball players in the world, I think basketball fans, media members alike, have always felt that KD's very abrasive, very defensive, very quick to defend himself. And when you look at his career trajectory, he has to understand that it comes with the territory when you have built a reputation as a guy who's always jumping in terms of trying to find that next super team. He essentially said that he doesn't care what Chuck nor Shaq said. And when you look at the Hall of Fame resume of Chuck, granted, he didn't win an NBA title, but some would say that he did give Michael Jordan the best finals as an opponent. That's debatable. Some would say Utah. But ultimately, I think that Chuck has the Hall of Fame resume where he is entitled to give his 2 cents. I also think that Shaquille O'Neal, guy who's sporting 4 rings with 2 different franchises. He won 1 with Miami, he won 3 with the Lakers, and with the Lakers, he was arguably the most dominant center in the history of the sport during that short time. I just think KD needs to focus on playing ball, but he needs to be a little more approachable when it comes to this. I think that if KD was a little more approachable, he wouldn't be getting his balls broken, so to speak, on the level that he does. Gonna move it over to Dan Orlovsky, former journeyman quarterback, and his comments about the Carolina Panthers. I find this kind of interesting. The Carolina Panthers last year under Steve Wilkes, who was the interim coach, he is now out, Frank Reich in, Ben McAdoo potentially being the next head coach after Reich if there's a short leash, slow start situation. I think the Carolina Panthers made some strides. I think defensively they could definitely be a top 10 unit. But for Orlovsky to say that they're a quarterback away from running that division for a decade, I think that is way premature. You cannot assume that the New Orleans Saints aren't going to figure it out. You cannot assume that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not going to figure it out because they do still have some pieces linked to their Super Bowl success. Granted, they just lost the greatest winner at the quarterback position. I just don't like anointing them as like a for sure thing because Carolina has had a history of being very inconsistent. And Frank Reich, even as a head coach, not the guy I would have chose. I would have stuck with the interim coach who had them playing hard. So to make it short and sweet, I think Dan Orlovsky is slightly out of his mind for kind of anointing the Carolina Panthers as a for sure shoe-in that they're going to win this division for years to come. I just think it's a little silly and definitely a little premature. Tonight, Creed 3 premieres in theaters. I am really looking forward to this. I'm going to try to the best of my ability to see this on my next off days, whether it be Sunday, Monday. But my question to the viewers here and moviegoers, can this franchise continue its very strong success with the Rocky Balboa character no longer being involved? I think that's a good question. I think it's one that we should consider. Rocky was so vital going back to when this series started in the 70s, ultimately evolving into Creed. But I do believe that Michael B. Jordan, being one of the hottest actors in Hollywood today, I think it's a necessary situation where the Balboa character needs to go away for now. He could potentially be reintroduced to the series down the road. As the storyline goes, I think what's really exciting about this is that it's showing Creed kind of take on some demons from the past, a friend turned foe. I think that this particular situation, a lot of people can find relatable, and it should be very exciting. And the answer to my question is yes, indeed. I think the Creed franchise is going to persevere, and I think you might even see 4 to 5, similar to what the Rocky series did before taking a sabbatical for a couple of decades and then coming back with Rocky Balboa and ultimately that transcending into the Creed movies. But I think the Rocky Balboa character has gone as far as it could go in terms of being a mentor to Creed. And as they say, the way that you miss something or someone is when they go away. So maybe 3-4 years down the road, should they make another movie in this franchise, potentially that can be the time that you bring in a Rocky Balboa character again. But Sylvester Stallone is currently enjoying very good success with his Tulsa King series, which you can find on Paramount. And yeah, I had low expectations, but I was proven wrong. Sylvester Stallone is killing that role, and I think he's finding something. And you got to give him credit. We talk about great actors, and I don't always think Stallone's name comes up because we just view him as an action guy, and I get it, but I think Stallone has really is underrated for I just don't think he gets enough praise. But I love what he's doing with this Tulsa King series. And I most definitely think that this could go places and stick around for a while. I don't think it's just going to be a one season kind of deal. I think it's something that could stick around for a decent amount of time. New York Knicks, as I said, New York Rangers, exciting time in Madison Square Garden. Look ahead for us to be dropping our MLB baseball previews. They're going to be coming soon. If you haven't, definitely watch last night's show with our good friend Sherrard, a.k.a. PB Rardo, and my guy Brett. We had a really good time breaking down a lot of NBA. So much fun that part of the motivation why I'm doing this show today, I wanted to make sure that I had time to speak on my thoughts in the moment on the Mets and Yankees with regard to the 2023 MLB season. Please like and subscribe to my channel, the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast on YouTube. And until next time, I am out. I may be back again tonight. Details to come. Enjoy your day.